So welcome to Ask Beck and Liz, where no topic is off limits. We want to answer your questions about business, about life, and everything in between. But be careful what kind of questions you ask us, because we're always going to be authentic and real. And again, to the point, no topic is off limits. So today's question, Elizabeth, has to do with truth. Why is truth so important? I'll throw that to you. That's a tough one.
Well, it's such a broad question, and I think it's going to lead to other questions throughout the next few weeks. But I think if I had to give a singular sentence, it would be because truth is trust.
Wow.
And without trust, what do you have? It's in any relationship in your life. It's a business relationship. It's a personal relationship. It's a parent-child relationship. It's a spousal relationship. It's employee-employer, franchisee-franchisor, customers. You know, if you can't trust all of those people, things are going to fall apart around you pretty quickly, don't you think?
No doubt. I like how you put it in a single sentence. Truth equals trust. You know, it's interesting. I'm particularly sensitive to folks that puff up or skirt the issues or blatantly lie. And it may look like a white lie to them, or a self-protective lie, or protecting someone else untruth. But it tells me a lot about their character, and it tells me a lot about if I can trust them, especially if the lie is a stupid little one. I know that sounds weird. It's like, if you're going to lie about a stupid little something, then what's going to happen when you're under a lot of pressure, and lying might get you out of that situation? You know, if I can't trust you with a little thing, then I certainly would doubt that I could trust you with something bigger. Which brings up the whole question, why, if there's so many benefits to truth and speaking the truth, even when you kind of screw up and you have to own up to it, why would someone choose to create untruth, or to then affect trust? Why would someone even do that?
You know, that's a hard one for me to answer, because I value truth so much as you do, and I think so many of us do. And I think that so many times people just don't want to face reality. The reality that they're in, that they've done something wrong, the reality that they're not capable of doing something they said they could. It feels like a failure, and you don't want to admit it instead of asking for help.
I think you just hit on something. Yeah. I remember asking years ago, there was someone I was working with, and goes back probably 30 years, and he was a pathological liar, just a pathological liar. And it was about stuff that really didn't matter. The truth would have been so much easier. And my father, as you know, used to be a missionary and a pastor. And I wanted to know, from a spiritual perspective, why somebody would lie when there was no benefit to lying. It didn't prevent someone's feelings from getting hurt, didn't have him get away with something. And my father said something that has always stuck with me. And he said, at the core of lying is always a feeling of inadequacy. And that inadequacy is something that they're covering with puffing up or just, you know, things that aren't true, to cover up what's really inside, which is, I'm not enough, I'm not adequate. And in our society, we foster that. We're always expecting people to measure up to certain things that maybe they're not capable of. And unconditional love and unconditional acceptance is not what our society is made of.
It's true. And we don't allow ourselves mistakes or failures. And you know, when that's what's put out into the world, everybody talks about your little fake Facebook life or Instagram life. It's all beautiful and perfect and wonderful. And when our industry sees that, when our children see that, and think that's what we're all aspiring to. It's such a false sense of reality. And understanding, I mean, I think if we all just said, I'm sorry, or I screwed up, you know, what can I do to fix it? And then the person receiving that allowed that to happen.
Right.
And says, instead of berating someone or judging someone or making them feel bad, saying, you're right, you did screw up, but here are things we can do to fix it, and we're going to work together to do that. I mean, to me, that would be such a better dynamic.
Yeah, I totally agree. So it's a two-way thing. Society has created this situation where we're expected to be this, and social media has even made it worse. And so then it's hard for us to say authentically, this is really who I am. I'm in pain. I screw up. I made a mistake. Whatever. It's hard to say those things for fear that we're not going to be approved of, accepted, or even in some cases forgiven, right? So it's a two-way street for us to hold a space for people that it's okay to screw up. It's okay to make mistakes. I'm going to forgive you. I'm going to love you. I'm going to accept you. I might hold you accountable, right? But I am going to do that. And at the same time, being willing to say, I am enough. I'm not perfect. I don't have it all together yet, but I'm enough as I am. So I don't have to pretend to be anything but that.
I think that's an excellent point. And I think that people appreciate that. They appreciate that kind of authenticity and that kind of ability to admit wrong. And I'll never forget, it's been, my son's 17 now, so it's been 15 years. He had a seizure disorder when he was little. And I remember going to the doctor's office, and it was a group, and there was one that was just the most arrogant thing, and he kept saying things that were wrong, and I would correct him, and he'd be mad. He'd be like, well, I'm going to give him this decongestant. I'm like, he's not allowed to have a decongestant because that triggers seizures. And he'd be like, huh, and just gruff. And then one time I went in, and this man was a little bit older and a little bit more refined and mature. And he asked me something, and I said, well, I don't actually know the answer to that. And he said, well, I don't either, but I'm going to look it up, and the next time you come in, we're going to discuss it. And I have never appreciated a doctor more who says, I don't know, but I'm going to find out. And it wasn't something we needed to know that second. But he was willing to admit that he didn't know something, which I find quite unusual in doctors. You know, they always want to come off like they've got all the answers. And so I will never forget that. And the more people are willing to do that, I think you remember that. You remember that, and you appreciate the humility.
And you trust him more. You trust him because he said, I don't know. Or you trust the person that says, I screwed up, can you forgive me? Or I probably said that in a way that was hurtful. Can I take it back? Or whatever it is. We trust those people that are authentic, that are real, that are fallible, that don't know everything. So you're right. This doctor you're going to trust. But this was a doctor, in my opinion, that was okay with being enough without having all the answers. He didn't have that chip on his shoulder, that pride, that ego that says, oh my gosh, I'm supposed to know everything, so I'm going to spew something off. So he had his ego in check, and which allowed him to learn, and which allowed you to have greater trust in him.
It does. And you know, when you say that about the inadequacy that people feel when they are like that, every person that I struggle with in my life, I think, has that problem of feeling inadequacy, and they're compensating for it by beating other people down and don't have the self-awareness. So how do you think you resolve that when someone is of that nature? How do you resolve the fact that they don't know that that's why they're doing it, but that is in fact why they're doing it? Do you have any insight into that? Because I would love to know.
Yeah, well, and that goes back a little bit to society is not okay with people not being perfect or of a certain status. So some of it is bringing back old-fashioned unconditional love and acceptance, right? But anytime we see exaggerations puffing up, and that can be in the form of untruths, there's usually a pride component, and pride is covering up my fear of not being lovable, not being adequate, being insufficient in some way. So the solution is always the same, which is to accept them where they are, that it's okay not to know, it's okay to mess up, it's okay. I'm going to love you anyway, but I'm not going to work with someone who's going to lie to me. I'm going to still be your friend. I'm still going to care about you. So it's creating a space of acceptance, but at the same time, accountability. I had an employee 3 years ago that I hired, young guy, and I gave him a lot of latitude because he was young and he was just still learning. And he constantly was messing up, which I expected in a young person in one of his first jobs. But then he would lie and he would give me misinformation, which would have me then go to clients unprepared. And that was really kind of messing things up. So I'd sit him down time after time. Listen, I care about you. I'm here to help develop you as your employer. I want you to have a successful career. But you've got to be honest with me. If you don't know how to do something, I can't help you. If but you tell me you can do something or that you have done something and you haven't, then I can't help you, right? So it's okay to be weak. It's okay to be small. It's okay to screw up, but it's not okay to lie, because now I can't trust you and my clients can't trust you, and that ends our relationship. So I think it's just being honest and having those conversations, and making someone know it's safe to tell you the truth.
Right. Well, and I think most of the time it probably is. People are just so worried about it. And I liked what you said about meeting people where they are. You know, when you're young and you're inexperienced, people don't have that expectation of you, but you might have it of yourself. And I had this very conversation with my daughter when she was finding out that she was going to work at the Washington Post, her first reporting job, and she was having a crisis of confidence. And she did it over the summer. I said, you did it. You did a great job. They wouldn't have invited you back if you hadn't done a good job. But what you need to understand is that you get to ask for help. They don't expect you to walk in the door as a 22-year-old newbie and know it all. They're collaborative. They have at all levels of experience, and you get to ask all of those people and learn from them. And so be confident in what you don't know. You know, and I think if we could all adopt that, then you're not afraid to ask a question if you are.
We're not perfect yet. We haven't transcended, right?
Exactly. And it applies to every age and stage of life. I'm doing a lot of new things right now. I mean, this podcast is new for us. So there are a lot of things I'm sure we are going to figure out as we go and screw up along the way.
Indeed, which wraps up this segment of our podcast. So it's time, Elizabeth, for us to sign off. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today, where passion and purpose collide, profits are made, and relationships are forged. This is Beck and Liz signing off and wishing you another purpose-filled and profitable week.